SEGA Rally was undoubtedly the darling of 1990s arcade racing. In 1995, in a move no one seen coming, Tetsuya Mizuguchi and AM3 took the motorsport of Rally and adapted it to the arcade perfectly, somehow capturing the thrill and spectacle of Rally while condensing the experience into 3.5 minutes without compromising the format of the sport. At the end of that same year, the game arrived on the SEGA Saturn, ushering in a new level of graphical performance on Sega's 32-bit console, with a version built from the ground up, tailored to Saturn's hardware, with multiple enhancements over the arcade original. SEGA Rally's popularity both in the arcade and on Saturn lit a fire under multiple developers who would go on to adapt Rally in their own, more realistic way. Infogrames with V-Rally and Codemasters with the Colin McRae series. SEGA though stayed true to their vision, releasing SEGA Rally 2 on the Model 3 board in 1998, with a port coming to the Dreamcast as well as Windows in 1999 that added a 10-year championship mode and car modification options to add longevity for those playing in the home. However, the discontinuation of the Dreamcast, coupled with the death of the arcade scene and the restructuring of Sega as they became platform agnostic, meant that SEGA Rally disappeared from the public consciousness, while those it influenced took centre stage. Fast forward to 2006, Sega are 5 years into their new form, having released tentpole franchises on other platforms: Jet Set Radio, Shenmue 2 and Panzer Dragoon on Xbox, while Virtua Fighter 4 and its upgrade Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution went to the PlayStation 2, and it's on Sony's console where SEGA Rally would finally make its return. But was it worth the wait? In September 2004, Sega announced the return of SEGA Rally, with a brand new game coming not to the arcade, but to PlayStation 2 in 2005 to mark the 10-year anniversary of the first game. However, development delays seen it miss the intended shipping date, releasing instead in January 2006, thus the name SEGA Rally 2006. From the off, things feel different. You open with a full motion video intro, something that the PlayStation had made the norm in the previous generation, and a trend which was only amplified in the PS2 era. It felt like every game had a CGI or FMV intro to set the scene, but SEGA Rally had always opened with an attract mode, showing off the latest arcade technology visuals with sweeping camera angles and close-ups of the cars. The first thing that you notice on the menu is the addition of a career mode, which we'll come back to later. But when diving into the arcade mode, straight away you notice that not all is as it seems. The arcade mode is split into series, each containing 4 stages and each set in a different location. So in effect, you get multiple executions of the original arcade game format, a single lap on a different location repeated 4 times. The tracks in each series are ranked by difficulty, Series 1 being easiest and Series 3 being hardest. The menu is backed by a remix of the music we hear when choosing our options in the original SEGA Rally, and as we head off into Series 1, we're presented with our choice of cars, and it's here where we start to see SEGA Rally 2006 shedding its identity. A Subaru Impreza, a Mitsubishi Lancer, the Citroen Zara, a Peugeot 307 and a Ford Focus, but no Toyota Celica, Lancia Delta or Stratos. And even then, the selection menu is borderline soulless. There's just no fun to it. There's no flashiness or bold fonts or bright colours like the arcade predecessors. It's functional, it does the job, but it's not SEGA Rally. Now to be clear, the original SEGA Rally cars are in the game. You just need to complete arcade mode to get them, but you need to unlock the second set of series first, so it feels like the game is making you jump through hoops to use cars which should have been there from the very start. Completing Series 1 to 3 unlocks Series 4 to 6, and winning Series 4 unlocks the Delta, Series 5 unlocks the Celica, and Series 6 unlocks the Stratos. The 4 tracks from the original SEGA Rally are in arcade mode too, but they're not labelled as such, they're just hidden away within the makeup of the game, existing as references that only SEGA gamers from the past will recognise. Series 4 consists entirely of remakes of the original game. Africa is desert, North America is forest, Europe is mountain, and Scandinavia is lakeside. Would it have been too much to ask to give the tracks their original names, or would that just have been too much of a break from reality? And that's the vibe right from the off with SEGA Rally 2006. You can see that SEGA were trying to modernise SEGA Rally into what they felt at the time modern gamers wanted, but in doing so they took inspiration from the likes of Colin McRae Rally and built a game that seems conflicted, clinging onto its identity while not fully committing to being a realistic rally experience. It's the most confused game in the SEGA Rally franchise. It tries to be SEGA Rally, but it wants to be Colin McRae, and ultimately it does neither. The track design in SEGA Rally 2006 is extremely bland. There's not a single standout moment in any of them. There's no memorable hairpins or tunnels, and the checkpoints have been changed from large overhead banners to a couple of markers either side of the track. Again, realism people, realism. No, it's just drab. Now keep in mind, this is called arcade mode. The key word here is arcade. So why are the load times so long? 17 seconds between each event is just too much. And while you sit there, you get to enjoy watching a single blue bar move slowly from left to right. Now, handling has always been a hallmark of SEGA Rally. The Saturn version to this day remains the gold standard in home arcade racing, but the original arcade game ushered in terrain impacted force feedback, which was the foundation for the Saturn version's physics engine, masterminded by Mizuguchi's team and Japanese rally driver Yoshio Fujimoto. SEGA Rally 2006 just doesn't feel fun to play. The controls are off regardless of playing on D-pad or analog stick. On D-pad the cars feel too heavy, on analog they feel too light. It's not necessarily a bad game to play, but it's just not SEGA Rally. It's ironic that this is meant to be the game that celebrates 10 years of SEGA Rally, because a decade before, Mizuguchi had brought in Fujimoto to make Saturn Rally feel as close to real Rally as possible with incredible track and handling physics. All the skills learned in the original game are redundant here. Straight line speed through multiple turns, car bumps, gear braking, there's none of it here. Every race feels like a procession, there's just no excitement. Speaking of fun and excitement, that's always been part of SEGA Rally's DNA. In fact, it's part of every SEGA arcade racer's DNA. Jeffrey's statue on Daytona USA, the pirate ship swinging overhead on Daytona USA 2, tunnels running underwater with dolphins swimming overhead on Scud Race, and heart attack mode in the home versions of Outrun 2. In comparison, SEGA Rally 2 is soulless. In fact, it takes itself far too seriously, but almost embarrassingly so. It's almost like it's become a parody of itself. When you run out of time on arcade mode, there's no the hallmark of the series, the phrase that's synonymous with the first two games. In fact, how often have you seen SEGA Rally mentioned on social media, only to see multiple replies with "Game over, yeah," whether it's in text or in GIF form? Not in SEGA Rally 2006 though. When you run out of time, the screen fades to black and you're back to the main menu. That's it. Seriously, SEGA? Even the announcers in the game sound far too serious. In fact, they're close to real-life rally co-pilots, complete with radio static sound effects. There's no over-the-top proclamations of what's ahead, it's all just too serious. The music, to be fair, has its moments. The remixed versions of the original SEGA Rally's music by Takanobu Mitsuyoshi is a great addition to Series 4, but out with of that, there's nothing that stands out. Now, the soundtrack has some of the biggest and best names from Sega's music past, but the issue is that their music sounds more suited to the games that they're best known for working on, not SEGA Rally. For example, boosted by Hideki Naganuma, sounds like it belongs in a Jet Set Radio game. Likewise, Handbrakes by Richard Jakes gives off incredible Metropolis Street Racer vibes, so much so that I had visions of racing on the Tokyo circuit at night on my Dreamcast. However, while fans of SEGA Rally instantly reach for arcade mode, the main part of the game is the career mode. A first for SEGA Rally, and while well enough executed, it was just a further dilution of the SEGA Rally experience. Career mode races consist of one of 4 events: 1v1s, races, time attack and total time series. Career mode is also split into 2 components, amateur and professional, which each splinter off further into open races as well as Class 1 and Class 2 events. As with other more serious rally games such as Colin McRae, you can buy parts to upgrade your car, which in turn leads to success that gives you a chance to sign with big brand sponsors. Win the Amateur Championship and you get the chance to sign with a major manufacturer in the professional ranks. The English translation patch for the game has made the career mode a far more welcoming experience, using the on-screen calendar to schedule race events and practice sessions. Ultimately, it's a decent enough mode, but like arcade mode before it, it just feels like a real slog to get through. Now, everyone who watches the content we make here at the Sega Guys knows how much I love SEGA Rally, but there was very little enjoyment to be found when playing 2006 to capture footage for this video. And in a way, SEGA Rally 2006 embodies the new era of Sega at that time perfectly. It's quite possibly the single best example of post-Sammy Sega compared to pre-Sammy. In 2003, just a year before the merger with Sammy, Sega released Outrun 2, a game which is, with every fibre of its being, a completely different feel, experience and vibe to SEGA Rally 2006. It's just so sterile, devoid of any of the magic that makes Sega games, well, Sega. It's almost like Sega were still rummaging around in the dark trying to find their identity following their transition to hardware and the subsequent acquisition by Sammy. The biggest insult though is that Sega stopped being themselves with SEGA Rally 2006, instead turning to the likes of V-Rally and Colin McRae for inspiration, the games that Sega had inspired in the first place. Which brings me back to the original game, because the limited edition of SEGA Rally 2006 comes packaged with a port of the very first SEGA Rally game, and while it's decent, it's little more than a pre-packaged emulation of the Model 2 game with an options menu hidden away by pressing select on the controller. Now, I'm going to cover this version more in a separate video, but suffice to say, its inclusion completely overshadows the game that it's packaged with. The original game, even in this emulated form on PS2, still pisses on SEGA Rally 2006. Now, content junkies may cry, but it's only got 4 tracks, 2 cars and a basic arcade mode, and you know what? They'd be right. But do you know what else is right? Those 4 tracks and those 2 cars are better than anything in SEGA Rally 2006. The original game is everything SEGA Rally 2006 isn't. It's fun, it's colourful, it's playable, it's got depth lurking beneath the surface, it's addictive, and it's Sega at their absolute best. Whereas SEGA Rally 2006 embodies the mood around Sega at that time. It's low key, it's suppressed, it's almost ashamed of itself. But hey, that's just my opinion as a fan of the original SEGA Rally game, a game that forever and always will be my favourite game of all time, a game that I've sank thousands of hours into in order to perfect every twist, turn and bend. But what are your thoughts on SEGA Rally 2006? Have you played it? Did you buy it back in the day? Did you enjoy it back then? Do you enjoy it now? Let us know in the comments below. This has been James the Segaholic of the Sega Guys. Thank you as always for watching, and until next time, we will see you on the Sega side.